I ask unanimous consent to enter in a colloquy with senators from Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Tennessee.
Both. Without objection.
Mr. President, we are here, obviously, as we are on a daily basis, to discuss the issue of health care reform. But we are in a rather unusual situation this morning because we don't know what we're discussing or debating. I mean, we find ourselves in an interesting situation after almost a year of consideration of health care reform with a measure that has been, at least a couple of the outlines of it we know, but frankly, we've had no details, except that Medicare is going to be extended to, eligibility for Medicare is going to be extended to age 55. I just would quote, there was a meeting yesterday amongst the Senate Democrats. Many Senate Dems emerged from yesterday's caucus meeting saying, quote, they had learned little about the public option agreement, quote, and that there were many outstanding concerns. Senator Mary Landrieu called the agreement, quote, a very good idea. Senator Blanche Lincoln said, quote, more information is needed. And Senator Ben Nelson said, I just want to know what the costs are. Well, so do the rest of us. So do the rest of us. So here we have a proposal after nearly a year that is being, quote, assessed by the Congressional Budget Office, and here we are with no knowledge of what that bill is about, with the exception of some bare essentials that have been leaked. What's this got to do with change? What's this got to do with bipartisanship? What's this got to do with anything? And frankly, we have an editorial in the Washington Post this morning that calls it, quote, Medicare sausage. And I ask unanimous consent that this editorial from the Washington Post be made part of the record. Says, quote,
without objection,
the emerging buy-in proposal could have costly unintended consequences. Could have costly unintended consequences. But we don't know what it is. But we know that never before in this entire year, I would ask my colleagues, have we seen a proposal that would increase eligibility, that would change eligibility for Medicare down to age 55. Never before. So the majority leader came to the floor this morning and said, well, if we accept an omnibus multi-trillion-dollar bill by unanimous consent, by the way, that bill, the omnibus appropriations bill, 6 bills totaling $450 billion, 1,351 pages long, 4,752 earmarks totaling $3.7 billion. And by the way, that spending on domestic programs increased by 14%, except for veterans, which is increased by only 5%. So the majority leader wants us to go out for the weekend after keeping us in all last weekend. And here we have an unspecified proposal that none of us know the details of the cost. So I'm supposed to go home to Arizona this weekend and say, my friends, we've been working on health care reform for a year, and guess what? I can tell you nothing. We need to stay in. We need to know what the proposals are. We need to have votes on it, and we need to tell the American people what's going on behind closed doors.
Would the senator from Arizona yield?
Glad to yield.
I recall our good friend, the majority leader, telling us on November 30th that we would be here the next 2 weekends. And then I recall our friend, the majority leader, saying Monday of this week we'd be here this weekend. My assumption was we were here to deal with this important issue that the majority has been indicating to everyone is so important that we must stay here and do it. And we're prepared to be here.
And vote.
And vote. And vote. In fact, we've been trying to vote for a couple of days now, and it's been difficult to get votes.
And could I ask majority leader, Republican leader, maybe if we're not going to have a vote, maybe we ought to have a vote to table the pending amendments, at least to have the Senate on record. And could I finally say, I know New Orleans is very nice this time of year, but perhaps maybe we ought to stay here and get this job done.
A couple of nights ago, I think it's important to reflect on the season we have here. A couple of nights ago, the senator from Arizona gave an impressive speech at the foot of the Capitol for the lighting of the Christmas tree. This is the Christmas season coming up. 2 weeks from tomorrow, a very important season. And the majority leader has said it's important for us all to stay through Christmas if necessary to debate this bill. And we've said, all right, That's what we'll do. We'll stay till New Year's Day. We'll stay to Valentine's Day, because this is indeed a historic bill, and we don't want to make a historic mistake, because it affects our children, our grandchildren, 17% of the economy, all 300 million Americans. None of us have ever seen our constituents more involved in an issue than in this issue. So we're here ready to go to work. So I'm wondering, as I listen to the senator from Arizona, not only do we not know what this bill is that we're supposed to enact by 2 weeks from today, our friends on the other side don't know what it is. They can't tell each other what it is. They come out of their they had sort of a rally yesterday. One of the senators described it as sort of a go team, go rally, but they didn't know what they were going to. All we've heard they're going to, and I imagine that the senator from Oklahoma would have, who's a physician, who's delivered many babies, seen many patients, still continues to do it, would have some comment on this. All we've heard is they may try to expand Medicare. And we heard yesterday from the executive director of the Mayo Clinic Health Policy Center, and I'll ask unanimous consent to place his letter
without
on the
objection.
record. And I'll just read one sentence from it, that expanding the current Medicaid system to persons 55 to 64 years old would ultimately hurt patients by accelerating the financial ruin of hospitals and doctors across this country. So I'm very puzzled why ideas like this are being cooked up behind closed doors 2 weeks before Christmas, and we don't know what they are. They don't know what they are, and the suggestion is that we not vote today and we go home this weekend.
Not only is there questions that need to be, that not only is the opposition admission from Mayo Clinic, but the American Hospital Association and the AMA have all come out steadfastly against. Could I ask my colleague from Oklahoma, and I quote from this editorial, here we are supposedly going out for the weekend, and the editorial from the Washington Post says, presumably the expanded Medicare program would pay Medicare rates to providers, raising the question of the spillover effects on a healthcare system already stressed by a dramatic expansion of Medicaid. Will providers cut costs, or will they shift them to private insurers, driving up premiums? Will they stop taking Medicare patients or go to Congress demanding higher rates? Once 55-year-olds are in, they are not likely to be kicked out, and the pressure will be on to expand the program to make more people eligible. The irony of this late-breaking Medicare proposal is that it could be a bigger step toward a single-payer system than the multi-quotose public option plans rejected by Senate moderates as too disruptive of the private market.
Well, I'd answer my colleague. As somebody who's practiced medicine for 25 years, MedPAC last year said 29% of Medicare beneficiaries it surveyed were looking for a primary care doctor and had great difficulty in finding somebody to treat them. Well, that's now. In the state of Texas, 58% of the state's doctors took new Medicare patients, but only 38% of the state's primary care doctors took new Medicare patients. And I'd make the case to you that if you delay care, that's denied care. And it's exacerbated in our older population, because an older person with a medical need is much more susceptible to the complications that can come from that initial problem. So if you delay the care, you're denying the care, and you're actually increasing the cost. So if you add, there's 15 million people in this population. I have no idea if there are plans to include all of them, but if you add 15 million new people to Medicare, what you're going to have is 50% of them aren't going to find a primary care physician to care for them, because the rate of reimbursement doesn't cover the cost of caring. So I think the editorial that you quote is exactly right. I'd also note, if I may, that President Obama lauds Mayo Clinic, and rightly so. I had a brain tumor removed summer before last by Mayo Clinic. I'm standing here on the floor because of their expertise.
Many who believe the senator from Oklahoma could not have a heart attack.
Well, I'll ignore that comment. The fact is what Mayo says is we got to figure out how we create the incentives in terms of how do we get people cared for at a lower cost. Medicare isn't the way to do it. Matter of fact, I heard our colleagues talk. We've had 8 votes since last Saturday. We're ready to vote. This is a 2,074-page vote. I've got 15 amendments in the queue. I want to vote on them. They don't want to vote because they don't want the American people to hear all the bad things